In American politics, we are conditioned to believe that great empires only fall to massive, earth-shattering events. We think it takes a catastrophic economic collapse, a monumental shift in ideology, or a foreign adversary to bring down a titan of Washington, D.C. But history tells a very different, much quieter story. Take a rising political star, a governor straight from the South Dakota plains, aggressively vetted for the highest offices in the land, a leader who practically built her entire political fortress on the absolute bedrock of traditional American family values. You'd think an empire like that would require an absolute cannon to destroy. But the truth? It usually just takes a whisper. When NBC News broke the bombshell report detailing allegations of a years-long affair between Kristi Noem and top political operative Corey Lewandowski, Capitol Hill wasn't just shocked. It was paralyzed. Here was a woman who had spent a lifetime meticulously crafting an ironclad, conservative reputation, suddenly risking absolutely everything for a secret kept in the dark. And for years, they played the DC game perfectly. They aggressively denied it. They attacked the media. They called the rumors garbage. They honestly believed that the sheer force of their political power could suffocate the truth. But here's the paradox. How does someone that smart, that calculated, and that intensely powerful walk so blindly into their own destruction? The answer isn't just about partisan politics, and it's definitely not about a media witch hunt. It's about a deeply wired, inescapable psychological trap that almost every powerful person eventually falls into. And by the end of this story, you're going to realize how this exact same mental blind spot, the one that brought down a political giant, is likely sabotaging your own life right now. Let's peel back the curtain. Imagine the absolute, crushing weight of living a double life in Washington, D.C. The American political landscape is a relentless, unforgiving pressure cooker. Every microphone placed in front of you, every camera flash at a black tie gala, every seemingly casual handshake at a fundraising dinner is a potential landmine. You are constantly surrounded by a 24/7 news cycle. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and relentless investigative reporters are all waiting in the wings to dissect your every syllable and scrutinize your every shadow. For a high-profile governor and a top-tier political operative, the explosive details revealed by NBC News weren't just a sudden, unpredictable lightning strike. According to reports, they were the culmination of a storm that had been brewing quietly in the hallways of conservative conventions and D.C. backrooms for years. Just imagine the sheer psychological exhaustion of maintaining that facade. Every single time you step up to a podium to deliver a passionate speech about traditional values, every time you smile for a holiday portrait with your spouse, you know, deep down in your bones, that there's a ticking time bomb directly beneath your feet. And how do people in power usually handle that ticking clock? They don't defuse the bomb. They build thicker walls around it. When confronted with the rumors, the defense mechanisms violently kicked in. Fierce, aggressive denials were issued to the press. Fingers were pointed. The allegations were labeled as garbage, and the journalists asking the questions were publicly attacked. But here's the terrifying reality of the abyss. When you build a massive fortress of lies to keep the world out, you inadvertently lock yourself inside. The paranoia becomes your shadow. Every aide who looks at you slightly too long, every delayed text message, every closed-door meeting you aren't invited to, it all starts to feel like the walls are rapidly closing in. You are completely isolated at the top. Now, pause for a second and think about your own life. Think about a time when you made a massive mistake and chose to cover it up. Maybe you hid something critical from your boss, to save your career, or you lied to your partner to avoid a devastating argument. Remember that sickening, hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach every single time your phone vibrated? Remember the sheer mental exhaustion of having to remember exactly which lie you told to which person, just to keep your story straight? Now, take that exact, suffocating feeling of dread and multiply it by a national audience of 330 million people. Imagine carrying that heavy, invisible burden onto national television. How do you even breathe when the very air in the room is thick with your own deception? When every single step forward feels like walking a frayed tightrope over a bottomless canyon, and you can feel the wind starting to pick up, you are trapped entirely by your own design. And the most agonizing part of the abyss is the quiet realization you have at 3 a.m. You know the question is no longer if you will fall, but when. Here is where almost everyone gets the psychology of a political scandal completely wrong. When we see a powerful figure like a governor or a cabinet secretary risk absolutely everything for a secret affair, our very first instinct is to ask, why? Why would someone so smart do something so incredibly reckless when they have so much to lose? We assume they made a massive gamble despite their power. But that is the paradigm shift. That is a grand illusion. They don't engage in high-risk, self-destructive behavior despite their power. They do it because of their power. Psychologists call this the hubris syndrome. It is a literal rewiring of the human brain that happens when an individual is exposed to massive amounts of authority, constant praise, and total insulation from consequence. When you spend years surrounded by political aides who agree with your every single word, wealthy donors who fund your every ambition, and massive crowds that cheer your every entrance, your brain's reward center gets completely hijacked by dopamine. Over time, you start to genuinely believe that the normal rules of gravity, the rules that apply to everyday Americans, simply do not apply to you anymore. You begin to feel invincible. And this leads us directly to the ultimate counterintuitive truth of Washington, D.C., an unspoken law of politics that dates all the way back to Richard Nixon and Watergate. It is almost never the original crime that destroys you. It is always the cover-up. If Kristi Noem had stepped in front of the cameras years ago, or even when the NBC News reports first surfaced, and chosen the agonizing, humiliating path of radical honesty, the outcome would have been entirely different. She could have looked the American public in the eye and said, "I am human. I failed my family, and I am deeply sorry." If she had done that, the media news cycle would have raged like a terrifying wildfire for exactly 1 week. And then the nation would have moved on. Why? Because at our core, America fundamentally loves a redemption story. We forgive vulnerability. But by choosing pride, by stonewalling the press, by putting up a combative front and attacking the messengers, she didn't extinguish the fire. She poured gasoline right on top of it. She turned a personal moral failing into a massive, ongoing test of her political integrity. This is the ultimate psychological twist that ruins so many highly successful people. The exact same instinct that makes you a fierce, unstoppable force in your career. The refusal to ever back down. The relentless drive to crush your opposition. The absolute unwillingness to show even a single ounce of weakness is the exact same instinct that will absolutely annihilate your personal life. What wins in the boardroom is lethal in the living room. When you try to politically outmaneuver the truth always wins. Always. Ruin does not happen overnight. It is never a sudden cliff you fall off. It is a slow, gradual staircase leading down into the dark. It is the brutal mathematics of the 1% rule of self-destruction. Because in politics, just like in your personal finances, your choices always compound. It starts incredibly small. And let's be honest, you're going to stumble. We all do. You will inevitably face temptations that seem entirely justified in the grueling heat of the moment. You will convince yourself, I work harder than anyone else here. I carry the weight of an entire state on my shoulders. I deserve a little escape. That is a flaw woven into the fundamental human condition. The compounding engine begins with just one private, lingering text message. Then it turns into an isolated conversation after a chaotic campaign rally. Then the lines begin to blur. You start making unprecedented professional exceptions, pulling an operative like Corey Lewandowski deeper and deeper into your inner circle, completely ignoring the blazing ethical red flags and the frantic warnings being raised by your own staff. Every time you get away with it, you make another 1% compromise. Day by day, lie by lie, the interest aggressively builds. You tell one lie to the press, which means you have to tell 2 lies to your family, which means you eventually have to tell 10 lies to the government. And that is exactly where the compounding interest of deception finally bankrupts you. Fast forward to the chilling, explosive climax inside the House Judiciary Committee. Imagine the sheer terror of that moment. You are sitting under oath. The national television cameras are rolling, and members of Congress are demanding a simple, definitive yes or no answer about the affair. The entire country is watching. But instead of the truth, the ego takes the wheel one last time. You dodge. You lash out. You call the questions garbage. You try to play the victim. But the most devastating, heartbreaking detail of all? Your husband is sitting right there in the audience, watching the entire facade completely crumble in real time. When you spend years fueling a machine with deception, eventually, the engine rips itself apart. The very next day, the President of the United States formally removes you from your cabinet position. The power, the prestige, the security, gone in a matter of hours. The bill always comes due. And when it finally does, it demands absolutely everything you have. Look at the contrast. On one side, you have a legacy that could have been written in the history books as a trailblazing leader of the American Midwest. Someone who was actively vetted to be Vice President of the United States. Someone who had the fierce loyalty of her base and a direct line to the Oval Office. On the other side, you have a legacy that is now permanently entangled in tabloid headlines, late-night talk show punchlines, and cautionary political science lectures. The stark, breathtaking difference between the absolute pinnacle of American power and the humiliating abyss of a public firing all comes down to one single thing: the refusal to accept the truth. But here is the most important part of this entire story. This isn't really about Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, the Department of Homeland Security, or the halls of Congress. It's about you. Look at your own life right now. What small, quiet lie are you fiercely defending? What exhausting facade are you burning all of your energy to maintain? Maybe it's a relationship that you know deep down is failing. Maybe it's a career path you're only staying in because you're too proud to admit you want out. Or maybe it's a mistake you made months ago that you are still secretly trying to cover up. Truth is the ultimate disruptor. It is completely terrifying. Yes, it will shake the foundation of your life, and it might even burn a few bridges. But it is the only thing that will ever truly set you free. A lie might protect your current position for today, but it will inevitably burn down your entire reputation tomorrow. Stop building your castle on a foundation of sand. Stop letting the compounding interest of deception dictate your future. Face your truth today. no matter how much it hurts, because the cover-up is always worse than the crime. If this breakdown changed your perspective and help you understand the psychology of power and consequence, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe to English for a Day. We're here to help you master not just a language, but the deep psychological lessons behind the stories that shape our world. I'll see you in the next video.